Hello, my name is Shah Peerally, and I am an attorney in the Bay Area. Our law firm deals with debt settlement and also immigration. Today I'm going to talk about debt settlement, what it is, and some of the frequently asked questions that we have tried to compile because there's so many questions out there. But still, we're trying our best to kind of answer the questions in a simple terms. What can be done for people who are in debts? First of all, the big question, what is a debt settlement? Well, the debt settlement is the process of negotiating your debts with the intent of obtaining a reasonable settlement. A reasonable settlement can be anything between 80% of the value up to even 15% of what you owe. That means, for example, if you owe $100,000 on a credit card, a law firm or a lawyer can negotiate to get you maybe to pay only $15,000, and sometimes, depending on situation, $80,000, whatever is possible to negotiate for you, depending on many factors such as your hardship, your ability to pay, etc. The truth is that it can be quite a daunting task to do that, because it's not very easy to navigate with the collection system the way they have set it. You have to keep calling, you have to get different people. Most of the times you get turned downs until you finally found the right mix and then have the law on your side and win a good deal for our clients. Again, here, debt settlement is not for everybody. Before I even start on the debt settlement, everything that I'm going to tell you today is for educational purpose only. You should not act or refrain to act solely based on the information I'm giving you. If you have any questions, you can call my office on 510-742-5887. First, before you even consider a debt settlement, the first option most people will be considering is a bankruptcy. What is a bankruptcy? Well, everybody knows about bankruptcy. It is something which has been there for years. And oftentimes, a bankruptcy is better than a debt settlement. Of course, the question is, do you qualify for bankruptcy? Many people will want to have a bankruptcy, would be glad to do a bankruptcy, but they can't do it because they don't qualify. Either Chapter 7 or Chapter 13 has their own requirements. And one caveat here, one thing, you should never be lying on your bankruptcy papers, because that can be construed, it's a fraud actually. You should not be lying. And for you not to be lying and then be able to get a bankruptcy, sometimes it's not doable, and we will not advise anybody to lie to do a bankruptcy. So one option becomes a debt settlement, because debt settlement is not based on being qualified. It's purely a negotiation between two parties, mainly the attorney from your side and their attorneys or the collection agencies. And we come to an agreement, there's a settlement agreement, it's signed, and after that you get your settlement. So first step, look into a bankruptcy. There are good bankruptcy lawyers out there who can help you, and you can call us if you need help on bankruptcy. We can refer you to a very good attorney. Our number to the office is 510-742-5887. There's also a second kind of people who do not want to file a bankruptcy. The reason for that is mostly a cultural reason, but also the stigma attached to bankruptcy. Nobody wants to be called a bankrupt. They would prefer to be called like, hey, I owe some debts, I paid them, but even I settled for less, I still don't have the title of a bankrupt. Also, after you file bankruptcy, there are a lot of things that will happen. For instance, you might be able not to get credit for a while and things like that. So that's not really the issue we're talking here. But at the same time, some people will prefer to do a debt settlement and maybe keep a couple of credit cards and rebuild their credit with it. So this is where debt settlement becomes interesting. After you consider all this, now we have to consider if you qualify for debt settlement. Well, if you owe more than $10,000 on a credit card, I'm talking unsecured debts here, like credit cards, lines of credit, second mortgages, and things like that, you probably will be eligible for a debt settlement if you can show hardship. Remember, it's all about a negotiation. How do you negotiate and how good the negotiator is, that will make the difference. Because anybody can pretty much go and call the bank and say, I want a deal. They might give it to you. But most of the time, they won't give you that good deal because they know you are not a negotiator, and they will do everything possible to get the maximum of money from you. This is where it makes a big difference for us as attorneys when we're dealing with those kind of cases. We are looking at it from different perspectives, including the legal perspective of it. And that's a difference also between an attorney and a debt settlement company. We are not a debt settlement company. I repeat that. We are not a debt settlement company. We are a law firm. We practice law. We are licensed to practice law in California. And this video is basically limited to California because we are licensed in California and we take clients only in California. So as long as you owe more than $10,000, even less, you can still do in debt negotiation, but a debt settlement. But the truth is that you don't really want to hire a lawyer to do that if it is less than $10,000, and you have also to consider the consequences on your credit of having a debt settlement, because on your credit it will show you have settled the amount for less, which is going to pull down some of your score. So you need to be careful. You might not want to do that. You might just want to make a deal and pay that debt. Well, the next question, can I negotiate on my own? Of course you can. Just like a divorce, just like you're filing your taxes, you can do it on your own. But why do you hire an attorney? That's because that's their job as an attorney, right? As an attorney, that's my job. We've been trained to negotiate for people, to settle for people, to even file lawsuits. And one of the things we have been seeing lately, if you check the success story on our website, on yourdebtsettlementattorney.com, you will see that many banks are not losing time to file a lawsuit. And once they file a lawsuit, I can tell you right now, you can still negotiate with them, but they have a lot of more power, because at this point they will serve you with a summons and they will ask you to answer, and most people are not able to do it. And the cost of hiring an attorney just to answer those without having a plan to make a deal with them will cost you, because you have to pay the attorney ultimately, unless you qualify for some consumer rights attorney, which are free attorneys. So you might look into those too. So the other thing that is important, people ask me, hey, well, I can call them and make a deal. Well, for one, they are very aggressive. I can tell you right now, they are not easy to deal with. We deal with them every day. Most of them are nice people, but it's their job to collect. You owe that money. Well, quote unquote, you owe that money. Sometimes some people don't owe. That's a different story. We're not talking about this here. But if you owe that money, pretty much, they will have the power to kind of make you feel, hey, you got to pay. And I'm going to talk in another video. I can talk about the tactics that they use, which are not supposed to be used, but they still use them sometimes. For example, they will really be harassing you. I use the word harassing, quote unquote, because it's not something that they're supposed to do. But they still do it. And we have seen so many examples where they would be calling the neighbors and things like that. And you don't want these kind of things to happen. Technically, they're not supposed to do it under the fair debt collection practices, but they still do it. So the other thing that happens is that when you're negotiating your own stuff, you get very emotional. And that's the worst part. There's a saying which says, he who represents himself has a fool for an attorney, and that applies for a she too. That what it means is basically, if you try to represent yourself, you'll be so emotionally involved into it that you might make major mistakes or even lose your temper and say things that can be used against you. So you need to be very, very careful. Even me as an attorney, if I have to do some kind of work for myself, I would probably hire an attorney. The reason for that is because I will not be emotionally attached to the case. Then I will look at it with an objective perspective, which is very, very important in negotiating your debt. Then also it helps. And then also the other advantage of hiring an attorney, of course, attorneys, those who practice in this area, knows about the law that are involved in that. For example, if you check my blog on yourdebtsettlementattorney.com, yourdebtsettlementattorney.com/blog, you will see 11 things that the collection companies cannot do to you, cannot use to collect your money. And guess what? If they violate any of those laws, you have an action in court. And that becomes more, hey, you know what? You should not be doing this to us. It's wrong. And since you're doing this to us, I am going ahead to report that. You cannot use that as to blackmail, because it's wrong. But once they know they have done that, and they know that this is a mistake, and they can really be penalized for that, guess what? Most of the time they will come back and make a deal with you. And you will not know those laws unless you practice in this area or you're familiar with the law. And a good attorney will know that. The other advantage is the cease and desist letter, which is the letter and the fair collection practices, and basically Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. I'm sorry for that. Basically, it's a cease and desist letter. What this letter will do will prevent the creditor from calling you. Once that letter is set, technically they are not supposed to call the creditor. I mean, not the creditor, the debtor. I apologize for that. The debtor, again, the debtor. That means they cannot call you, and that can be applied usually for lawyers, because that's the law. We are lawyers. We represent people, and if they violate that, there are some severe penalties. It can range from $100 to $1,000 per cause. So you cannot use that if you are negotiating yourself. But at the same time, yes, you can still negotiate on your own. Another question we get very frequently is, at what point should I start my debt settlement? Well, you should consider a debt settlement when you're faced with a genuine hardship. Very, very important. People just think, okay, I don't want to pay the credit card companies. No, that's not the point. If you have money, you got to pay. But if you're really in trouble, you need to work on things, you can basically go ahead and say, this is a hardship, and based on that hardship, I will go ahead and make a deal with the bank. A hardship can be anything like you lost your job, you got sick, you're in the hospital, a baby was born, you have to take care of another family member, and if you will have been hospitalized, this is the biggest hardship we get. People who have been hospitalized because of the stress, because of job-related incidents or something like that. You can make a deal with the bank. And the banks are pretty nice somehow. They will make a deal with you. And the other reason that you should use a debt settlement is if you want to protect some of the assets. Even bankruptcy has some provisions for homestead and certain amount of assets that you can keep. Many people, especially in the immigrant community, tend to have some money saved on the side. And that money, usually they keep it for the really, really hard times or for their children. If you do a bankruptcy, for example, a Chapter 7, basically the trustee will own all this. And the trustee will be distributing it after having your deduction for homestead, etc. So a debt settlement at this point becomes interesting. And if you're the main part that we have seen, no credit card company is going to make a deal with you if you're not late on your card. That doesn't mean you go ahead and you become late on it. So it is very, very important that you go ahead and you make sure that whenever you're talking to a debt settlement law firm, that you should not, if you're not late, then it's very, very hard to get a deal for you. So, and also you have some money in your hand, or a friend will lend you the money to make a deal. Because the way it works is, we don't work like regular debt settlement companies. We make a deal on a settlement amount and we propose that deal, and you have to come up with that money. Certain times we're able to break it in maybe 12 payments or 2 payments or 3 payments, but there's no interest attached to it. Once we close the deal, it's closed. Most of the time we don't let them take more financial charges at this point. But you have to have the money. How are you going to pay them if you don't have the money? Now the other question is that some people will come and say, you know what, I'll just ignore them. A very bad idea. What happens when you ignore them? Well, for a while it will be okay. First, the lender is going to try to collect from you nicely, gently. Then he's going to get more aggressive. They're going to send it to a collection agency or charge off the debts and sell it to someone. And at this point, collection agencies, I can tell you right now, can be really, really, really aggressive. Some of them have even broken the law, being too aggressive. They have been calling neighbors, they have been threatening people to put people in jail, which by the way they cannot do. But people get scared, especially in the immigrant community. Most people are very scared, and they think that if they owe a debt, they will go to jail, which is not true unless there's a fraud committed. But I'm not getting into that. But you can read more on that on my website on yourdebtsettlementattorney.com/blog. Well, what happened next is that if they cannot get the money, then a lawyer will get involved. And now more and more collection agencies are using lawyers to collect their debts, because they ultimately will go ahead and get